What happens when two of the most talked about women in entertainment find themselves face to face on live television, with years of unspoken tension finally bubbling to the surface? Today, we're diving into an explosive confrontation that had viewers glued to their screens as Angelina Jolie and Meghan Markle clashed in ways nobody saw coming. This wasn't just another celebrity interview, this was a masterclass in how to handle someone who's been throwing shade behind closed doors for years. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you won't believe how this unfolds. The atmosphere in the View studio was electric as Angelina Jolie settled into her chair, promoting her latest humanitarian documentary. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, Alyssa Farah Griffin, and Sunny Hostin had been chatting casually during the commercial break, but there was an undeniable shift in energy when the surprise guest was announced. Meghan Markle, making an unscheduled appearance to discuss her upcoming podcast series, had requested to join the panel mid-show. Whoopi kicked things off with her usual directness. "Well, we have an unexpected treat today. Meghan Markle has joined us to talk about her new venture. Meghan, what brings you here on such short notice?" Meghan adjusted her blazer and smiled that practiced smile we've all seen countless times. "Whoopi, thank you for having me. I was actually in the building for another interview and heard that Angelina was here. I thought it would be wonderful to finally meet in person, especially since we've both been so passionate about similar causes." Angelina's expression remained neutral, but those who know her could see the slight tightening around her eyes. "That's interesting, Meghan. I wasn't aware our paths had crossed in the humanitarian space before." Joy Behar, never one to miss potential drama, leaned forward. "Oh, this is getting good already. Are you two saying you haven't worked together before? Because the media has been comparing your advocacy work for years." Sarah Haynes tried to keep things diplomatic. "Maybe we should focus on the positive impact you're both making." "Angelina, your documentary sheds light on refugees in ways most people never see." But Meghan wasn't about to let that redirect happen. "Absolutely, Sarah. And that's exactly why I wanted to join this conversation. I think there's so much we can learn from each other's approaches." "Angelina, I've always admired how you've used your platform, though I sometimes wonder if working within existing systems might be more effective than, well, working around them." The studio fell silent. Sunny Hostin's eyebrows shot up. Alyssa Farah Griffin shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Even the camera operators seemed to sense they were witnessing something significant. Angelina's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath. "That's fascinating coming from someone who spent less than 2 years in the royal system before deciding it wasn't working for them. I've been doing this work for over 2 decades, Meghan. I've learned that real change happens when you're willing to get your hands dirty, not when you're making podcasts about it." Whoopi tried to regain control. "Ladies, let's take a step back here." But Meghan was already firing back. "I think that's a rather narrow view, don't you? Some of us believe that sharing our stories, being vulnerable about our experiences, can create just as much impact. Not everyone has the luxury of UN appointments handed to them because of their Hollywood connections." The audience gasped. Joy Behar's mouth fell open. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Angelina's laugh was cold. "Handed to me? Meghan, I've been to refugee camps in 43 countries. I've sat with women who've lost everything, children who've seen horrors you can't imagine. I didn't get those appointments because I married well, or because I complained about my family on television. I got them because I showed up, consistently, without cameras, without press releases, without making it about my own trauma." Alyssa tried to jump in. "I think both of you have made significant contributions." Meghan's composure was starting to crack. "That's incredibly patronizing, Angelina. You don't know anything about my journey or the challenges I've faced. Just because your approach is different doesn't make it superior." "You're right," Angelina said, her voice getting quieter, more dangerous. "I don't know your journey, but I know what I've seen in the field, and I know what real suffering looks like. And it doesn't look like someone with a $40 million Netflix deal complaining about curtsy protocols." Sunny Hostin jumped in. "Okay, I think we need to acknowledge that both of you have platforms, and both of you are using them. Can't we find common ground here?" Meghan turned to Sunny with frustration clear in her voice. "That's exactly the problem. Everyone wants to find common ground and play nice, while some of us are trying to have honest conversations about systemic issues. I'm trying to change things from the inside, to show that institutions can evolve." Angelina's patience was clearly wearing thin. "From the inside? Meghan, you left. You literally left the institution you're claiming to change from within. And now you're sitting here lecturing me about effectiveness while I'm still in the trenches doing the actual work. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Joy Behar, sensing ratings gold, decided to poke the bear. Angelina, that seems pretty harsh. Meghan's been very open about her struggles with mental health and the pressure she faced. Angelina turned to Joy with an expression that could freeze fire. And I commend anyone brave enough to discuss mental health. But using your struggles as a shield against criticism while simultaneously positioning yourself as a global changemaker is problematic. You can't have it both ways. Meghan's face flushed red, her media training clearly being put to the ultimate test. That's rich coming from someone who's built an entire brand around being the saint of Hollywood. At least I'm honest about my struggles, instead of pretending to be perfect all the time. Whoopi slammed her hand on the desk. Hold up, we're gonna take this down a notch right now. But Angelina wasn't backing down. Her voice remained calm, which somehow made her words cut deeper. Brand? Meghan, this isn't a brand for me. This is my life's work. While you were worried about which tiara to wear, I was sitting with mothers in South Sudan watching their children starve. While you were negotiating your exit strategy, I was advocating for policy changes that actually save lives. Sarah Haynes looked panicked. Maybe we should go to commercial. No, Sunny said firmly. This is important. These are two influential women with different perspectives. Let's hear them out. Meghan's voice rose an octave. You keep talking about real work like activism only counts if it happens in a war zone. Some of us are fighting battles closer to home, dealing with institutional racism, fighting for representation. Just because my fight looks different doesn't make it less valid. Angelina leaned back slightly, studying Meghan with those piercing eyes. You're absolutely right about fighting institutional racism. It's crucial work. But let's be honest about what happened. You had a platform within one of the most visible institutions in the world, and instead of using it to create lasting change from within, you turned it into a personal narrative about your own victimization. Joy Behar whistled low. Damn, Angelina, tell us how you really feel. Alyssa tried desperately to mediate. I think both perspectives have merit. Meghan, your interview brought attention to important issues within the royal family. Meghan grabbed onto that lifeline. Exactly, Alyssa. Sometimes you have to be willing to sacrifice everything to shine a light on the truth. Not everyone can afford to stay silent and complicit. That word, complicit, hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Angelina's eyes narrowed dangerously. Complicit? Angelina repeated slowly. That's an interesting choice of words from someone who lived in luxury for years before deciding the system was broken. Tell me, Meghan, when exactly did you realize the royal family had issues with racism? Was it before or after you got your title? The studio audience was dead silent. Even the crew had stopped moving. Whoopi looked like she was watching a car crash in slow motion. Meghan's voice shook slightly. I'm not going to sit here and let you minimize my experience or question my integrity. You don't know what I went through behind closed doors. You're right, Angelina said, her tone softening just enough to be more devastating. I don't know what you went through privately, but I know what the rest of us saw publicly. Designer dresses, royal tours, a fairy tale wedding that cost millions while people around the world were struggling. And then, when things got difficult, instead of fighting to change the system from within, you took the money and ran. Sarah Haynes finally found her voice. Angelina, that seems unfair. Leaving a toxic situation can be the healthiest choice. Absolutely, Angelina agreed. Self-preservation is important, but you can't have it both ways. You can't position yourself as a revolutionary changemaker while simultaneously admitting you gave up when the going got tough. Real change requires staying power, not just good intentions and a Netflix deal. Sunny jumped in, trying to create some balance. But Meghan has continued her advocacy work through Archewell and her various platforms. Meghan nodded eagerly. Thank you, Sunny. That's exactly right. I'm reaching millions of people through podcasting, through our foundation. We're creating real change in communities that need it most. Angelina's laugh was sharp. Podcasting. Right. Because what refugees really need is someone in a Montecito mansion talking about finding their voice. Meghan, I've been to communities that actually need help. They need clean water, medical supplies, legal protection. They don't need inspirational content from someone who's never actually had to worry about where their next meal was coming from. Joy Behar leaned forward, fully invested now. Okay, but Angelina, didn't you also benefit from privilege? You're a millionaire actress. Of course I did, Angelina said without hesitation. And I've spent the last 20 years trying to use that privilege responsibly. I didn't wait until I needed a career pivot to start caring about humanitarian issues. I didn't turn my personal drama into a brand. I put in the work, consistently, quietly, without making it about my own story. Meghan's media training was completely gone now. This is exactly the problem. Women tear each other down instead of supporting each other. I expected better from you, Angelina. Support? Angelina raised an eyebrow. Is that what you call what you've been doing? Because from where I sit, it looks like you've been using the struggles of marginalized communities as props in your own narrative. Real support means doing the work even when no one's watching, even when it doesn't advance your personal brand. Whoopi tried one more time to regain control. Ladies, we need to find a way to wrap this up constructively. But Alyssa, surprisingly, had something to say. Actually, Whoopi, I think this conversation is important. Meghan, can you help us understand how your current work is different from what Angelina is describing? Meghan straightened up, seeing an opportunity. Of course, what Angelina doesn't seem to understand is that storytelling is activism. Sharing our truth, being vulnerable about our experiences, it gives other people permission to speak up. My podcast reaches millions of people who might never hear these important messages otherwise. Angelina's response was swift and surgical. Storytelling can absolutely be activism when it's done responsibly, but there's a difference between using your story to help others and using other stories to help yourself. Your podcast, your interviews, your book deals, they all center around your personal experience. Where's the episode about the women I met in Afghanistan who can't even leave their homes? Where's the story about the children in Yemen who are dying while we sit here debating podcast strategies? The silence that followed was deafening. Meghan's face had gone from flushed to pale, her hands visibly trembling as she reached for her water glass. The view panel looked like they were watching a public execution. Sarah Haynes cleared her throat nervously. I think maybe we're being a bit harsh here. But Sunny wasn't having it. No, Sarah, this is exactly the conversation we need to be having. Meghan, how do you respond to that criticism? Meghan's voice was barely above a whisper. I can't win with you, can I, Angelina? If I talk about my own experiences, I'm self-centered. If I don't, I'm inauthentic. You've made up your mind about me before I even walked in here. Angelina's expression softened slightly, but her words remained firm. I haven't made up my mind about you, Meghan. I've made up my mind about your methods. There's a difference. I'm sure you genuinely care about these issues, but caring isn't enough. Good intentions aren't enough. You need to be willing to do the hard work, the unglamorous work, the work that doesn't get you magazine covers or streaming deals. Joy Behar, sensing this was the moment, leaned in. So what would that look like, Angelina? If you were advising Meghan, what would you tell her to do differently? Angelina looked directly at Meghan, her gaze intense but not unkind. Stop making it about yourself. If you really want to help marginalized communities, amplify their voices. Don't use them as background music for your own story. Use your platform to highlight their work, their solutions, their leadership. Stop positioning yourself as the savior and start positioning yourself as an ally who follows their lead. Meghan's composure finally cracked completely. That's easy for you to say. You've never had to deal with the kind of scrutiny I faced, the racism, the constant attacks on my character. You don't understand what it's like to have your every move dissected and criticized. Angelina's laugh was bitter. Really? Meghan, I went through one of the most publicized divorces in Hollywood history. I've been called a homewrecker, a bad mother, crazy, manipulative. I've had my mental health questioned, my parenting criticized, my every relationship analyzed. The difference is, I didn't turn that pain into a career. Whoopi finally found her authority again. Okay, that's enough. Both of you have valid points, but we're getting personal here. But Alyssa surprised everyone by speaking up. Actually, Whoopi, I think Meghan asked a fair question. Angelina, how do you separate your personal experiences from your advocacy work? Angelina took a breath, her tone becoming more measured. It's simple, Alyssa. When I'm in the field, it's not about me. When I'm meeting with government officials, it's not about my story. When I'm fighting for policy changes, I don't mention my custody battles or my struggles with anxiety. I keep my personal life separate from my humanitarian work because the work is bigger than me. Meghan found her voice again, though it shook with emotion. But that's the privilege you have that I don't. As a woman of color, I can't separate my identity from my work because my identity is why the work matters. My experience with racism in the royal family isn't separate from my advocacy, it's central to it. For the first time in the entire interview, Angelina paused. The studio held its breath. "You're absolutely right about that," Angelina said finally, "and I apologize if I minimized that reality. Your experience with racism is valid and important. But Meghan, being a woman of color who experienced discrimination doesn't give you a free pass to exploit other marginalized communities for content. You can center your identity in your work without making other people's struggles about your personal journey." Sunny nodded slowly. "That's a really important distinction." Meghan looked like she'd been slapped. "Exploit? How dare you use that word? Everything I've done has been to help people, to create change." Angelina's patience finally snapped. "Help people? Meghan, name one concrete policy change your advocacy has achieved. Name one law that's been passed, one institution that's been reformed, one measurable improvement in anyone's life besides your own bank account." Joy Behar whistled. "Oh snap." Meghan sputtered, clearly not expecting such a direct challenge. The Archwell Foundation has. There are initiatives." "Initiatives," Angelina repeated flatly. "Meghan, I helped establish legal frameworks for refugee protection. I've lobbied for legislation that's prevented thousands of sexual assaults in conflict zones. I've worked with the UN to create policies that have saved actual lives. What have you actually accomplished beyond raising your own profile?" Sarah Haynes looked uncomfortable. "Maybe we should focus on future collaboration rather than past achievements." But Meghan was spiraling now. "This is exactly what they did to me in the royal family, questioning my motives, minimizing my impact, making me prove my worth over and over again. I thought another woman would understand." Angelina's voice became deadly quiet. "Don't you dare compare me to the people who hurt you, Meghan. I'm not questioning your worth as a person. I'm questioning your effectiveness as an activist. And frankly, if you can't handle that kind of scrutiny, then maybe you're not ready for the work you claim to want to do." Whoopi slammed her cards down. "And that's where we need to stop this." But Sunny had one more question. "Meghan, how do you respond to Angelina's challenge about measurable impact?" Meghan's eyes were now openly hostile. "I respond by saying that impact isn't always measurable in policy changes. Sometimes impact is giving someone the courage to leave an abusive situation or helping a young woman realize she deserves better treatment. Not everything has to be quantified to be valuable." Angelina nodded slowly. "You're absolutely right, and if that's the work you want to do, then do that work. But don't call it humanitarian advocacy. Call it what it is, personal empowerment content. There's nothing wrong with that, but let's be honest about what it is." Alyssa tried one final time. "Is there any common ground here? Any way you two could work together?" Both women spoke at the same time. Angelina: "Not until she stops using real suffering as content for her brand." Meghan: "Not until she stops gatekeeping activism and recognizes different approaches." The studio was silent except for the hum of the cameras. Whoopi looked directly into the camera. "Well, that was certainly something. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be discussing lighter topics, I promise." As the cameras cut to commercial, neither woman moved from their seats, still staring at each other across the table. The tension was so thick that even the crew seemed afraid to approach them. The confrontation was over, but something told everyone in that studio that this was far from finished. Angelina had systematically dismantled every argument Meghan had made, exposing what she saw as the difference between real activism and performative advocacy. Whether viewers agreed with her methods or not, one thing was clear. This was a masterclass in how to call someone out without losing your composure, and Meghan Markle had just been schooled on live television by someone who'd spent decades actually doing the work. So what did you think about this explosive confrontation? Do you think Angelina went too far? Or was this exactly what needed to be said? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more unfiltered celebrity drama analysis.